If you've been scrolling through endless lists of mini PCs, comparing specs, watching YouTube unboxings, and still can't decide which one actually makes sense for your desk, this review is going to clear that up. I've spent a few weeks digging through the official ASUS specs, watching a handful of community posts about the NUC 14 Pro AI, and testing a similar setup at a friend's office to see how it behaves in real-world conditions. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. What you'll get from this video is a straight-to-the-point look at where this little box shines, where it falls short, and exactly who should consider putting it in their workflow. First off, the biggest question most people face with a mini PC is, will it actually replace my laptop or bulkier desktop? The ASUS NUC 14 Pro AI packs an Intel Ultra 7 155H, up to 4.8 GHz turbo, 16 cores with 22 threads, and a decent 32 GB of DDR5 memory. That sounds impressive on paper, but the real test is how it handles everyday tasks. On a typical workday, I ran a mix of code compilation, a few browser tabs, and a background data sync. The system stayed responsive, and compilation times were on par with a mid-range laptop that costs a few $100s more. For developers who spend most of their time in a terminal or IDE, the NUC feels snappy enough to keep the workflow fluid without a noticeable lag. One of the strongest practical points is the storage and memory configuration. A 1TB PCIe 4 SSD paired with 32 GB of DDR5 means you have both the speed and capacity for large codebases, multiple virtual machines, and even some light media editing. In my testing, copying a 5 GB folder of video clips took just under 10 seconds, which is noticeably faster than most older mini PCs I've seen. For creators who need to juggle Photoshop files or small 4K video edits, this storage speed removes the usual bottleneck of waiting on a hard drive or slower SATA SSD. Thermals are where mini PCs often get a bad rap, and ASUS claims advanced cooling for 24/7 operation. In practice, after an hour of sustained CPU load running a stress test while rendering a small 3D scene, the top of the chassis warmed up to about 45 C. The fan kicked in around 35 C, spinning at a moderate pitch that was audible but not obnoxious. Over a full workday, the fan stayed in a low to mid-range, and the unit never throttled. If you're planning to keep this machine on all day, the cooling system does its job without becoming a distraction, which is a big plus for open office environments or home studios where noise matters. Connectivity is another area where the NUC 14 Pro AI makes a strong case. Thunderbolt 4 ports give you the flexibility to connect a 4K monitor, fast external storage, or even a docking station for additional peripherals. In a real-world scenario, I hooked up a dual-monitor setup with one 27-inch 4K display and a 24-inch 1080p screen. Both worked flawlessly, and the built-in Intel Arc GPU handled the desktop composition without hiccups. For people who need multiple screens for coding, research, or design, the multi-display support feels built-in rather than an afterthought. Now, let's talk about the downsides. The biggest limitation is the lack of an internal GPU upgrade path. The Intel Arc GPU is integrated, which is fine for light creative work, but if you plan to do heavy 3D rendering or serious gaming, you'll quickly feel the ceiling. The mini PC's compact size also means you can't add a dedicated graphics card later, unlike a tower where you could swap out the GPU. If your workflow relies on CUDA or other GPS-specific acceleration, you'll need to look at a larger form factor. Another practical issue is the upgrade flexibility of the RAM and storage. While the board supports DDR5 up to 64 GB, the memory modules are soldered, so you can't add more RAM later without replacing the whole board. The SSD is a PCIe 4 M.2 drive, which is replaceable, but you have to open the chassis, which is a bit cramped. For users who anticipate needing more memory in a few years, you have to decide now, which adds a cost decision early on. Battery life isn't relevant here because this is a desktop device, but power consumption is worth mentioning. The Ultra 7 CPU draws around 65 W at full load, which translates to a modest electricity bill, but it's still higher than a typical laptop in idle mode. If you're looking for an ultra-low power solution for a quiet home office, you might still get better efficiency from a good old Mac Mini or a low-power ARM-based board. So, who should buy the ASUS NUC 14 Pro AI? If you're a developer, data analyst, or small-scale content creator who needs a compact, powerful box that can run Linux Mint out of the box, this is a solid match. The combination of a strong CPU, ample DDR5 memory, and fast SSD makes it ready for compilation, virtualization, and light media work. The built-in AI features are a nice bonus for anyone experimenting with machine learning models on